Christopher Blake tightened his grip on the steering wheel as he drove down the quiet suburban road. The night was calm, with only the hum of his luxury car breaking the silence. He had just left a business meeting in the city and was heading back to his penthouse downtown. But something felt off about the drive. The smooth purr of the engine seemed to falter slightly, and before Christopher could fully process what was happening, the car sputtered and came to an abrupt stop. He sighed, heavily, tapping the dashboard as if expecting it to respond. "Come on," he muttered under his breath. Nothing happened. The sleek black car sat motionless on the side of the empty street, its lights casting long shadows across the pavement. Christopher glanced at his phone resting in the cup holder. No signal bars blinked back at him. Great, he thought. Just great. Frustrated, he stepped out of the vehicle, adjusting his tailored suit jacket against the cool evening air. This wasn't how he planned to spend his night. As a self-made millionaire who built his empire from scratch, Christopher was used to solving problems quickly and efficiently. But this? A broken-down car in the middle of nowhere? It was unfamiliar territory for him. As he leaned against the hood trying to figure out his next move, headlights appeared in the distance. A minivan slowed down and pulled over a few feet ahead of him. The driver's door opened and a woman stepped out. She wore jeans, sneakers, and a light jacket, her dark hair tied back in a loose ponytail. Her face was kind but tired, the kind of exhaustion that comes from juggling too many responsibilities. "Hey," she called out, walking toward him. "Everything okay here?" Christopher straightened up, surprised by the interruption. "Not really," he admitted. "My car just stopped working." She nodded sympathetically. "I've been there. Cars have a way of doing that when you least expect it." Pausing for a moment, she added, "Do you need help? I've got some basic tools in my van, though I'm no mechanic." Christopher hesitated. Accepting help from a stranger wasn't exactly his style, especially not from someone who admitted they weren't an expert. Still, stranded on this deserted road with no phone service, he didn't have many options. "Sure," he said finally. "I appreciate it." The woman smiled warmly and extended her hand. "I'm Emily Dawson, by the way." "Christopher Blake," he replied, shaking her hand briefly. Something about her demeanor put him at ease, even though he couldn't quite explain why. Emily retrieved a toolbox from her van and joined Christopher near the front of his car. Together, they popped the hood and peered inside. The engine looked complicated, a maze of wires and metal parts that meant nothing to either of them. Still, Emily rolled up her sleeves and began examining things carefully, pointing out possible issues as she went along. "You know," she said after a moment, "this might be beyond both of us. Maybe we should call someone." "I don't have any reception," Christopher admitted, gesturing toward his phone. "What about you?" Emily checked hers and shook her head. "Same problem, no bars." They exchanged a glance, both silently acknowledging the challenge ahead. Then Emily brightened. "Wait, I think my neighbor, Mr. Peterson, knows a thing or two about cars. He's retired, but he used to work as a mechanic. Let me give him a call." While she walked a short distance to get better reception, Christopher leaned against the car, watching her go. There was something striking about Emily. Not just her willingness to help a complete stranger, but also her calmness in the face of chaos. Most people would have driven past without a second thought. Yet here she was, offering assistance despite clearly having her own life to manage. When Emily returned, she looked relieved. "Mr. Peterson is on his way. He said he'll bring some tools and see what he can do." "That's good news," Christopher said, genuinely grateful. "Thank you for sticking around. You didn't have to do that." Emily shrugged. "It's no big deal. Besides, I know what it's like to be stuck somewhere. My son and I have had our share of car troubles." Her casual mention of her son caught Christopher's attention. "You have a kid?" "Yeah," she replied, with a soft smile. "Liam, he's 7, keeps me busy, but I wouldn't trade him for anything." Christopher nodded, intrigued. Despite their vastly different lives, one filled with boardrooms and private jets, the other with school pickups and grocery runs, he found himself curious about hers. "What do you do?" he asked. I work at a daycare during the day and clean offices at night, Emily explained matter-of-factly. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills. Christopher was struck by her honesty. There was no bitterness in her tone, just a straightforward acceptance of her circumstances. He admired that. Before long, an old pickup truck pulled up beside them. Out climbed Mr. Peterson, a wiry man in his late 60s with grease-stained hands and a friendly grin. After introductions were made, he set to work on the car, occasionally asking Emily to hand him tools or hold a flashlight. Christopher watched, quietly, feeling oddly out of place but also oddly grateful for the teamwork unfolding around him. As the minutes ticked by, Christopher noticed something glinting faintly on Emily's left hand. At first, he dismissed it as a trick of the light, but then he realized it was a ring, a simple gold band with a small diamond embedded in the center. Something about it tugged at his memory, though he couldn't quite place why. When Mr. Peterson finally announced that the car was fixed, Christopher exhaled in relief. "Thank you," he said sincerely, reaching into his wallet to offer payment. The older man waved him off. "Don't worry about it. Just glad I could help." Turning to Emily, Christopher extended his gratitude again. "And thank you. I don't know what I would have done without your help tonight." "It's no trouble," she replied with a shrug. "Just paying it forward, I guess." As they stood there exchanging pleasantries, Christopher's eyes drifted to the ring once more. It nagged at him, stirring memories he hadn't thought about in years. When Emily turned to leave, he impulsively blurted out, "That ring, it's beautiful. Where did you get it?" Emily paused, looking down at her hand. For a brief moment, her expression softened, almost wistful. "Oh, this? It belonged to my grandmother. She bought it at a flea market years ago. Said it reminded her of something special, though she never told me what." Christopher felt a chill run down his spine. Flea market? That couldn't be a coincidence. But before he could press further, Emily gave him a quick wave and climbed back into her van. "Take care, Christopher," she called out before driving away. Standing alone on the quiet road, Christopher stared after her taillights, his mind racing. Could it really be the same ring? And if so, how had it ended up on Emily's finger? Whatever the answers were, one thing was certain. This chance encounter had left him with more questions than he'd anticipated, and a strange sense that fate had intervened in ways he couldn't yet understand. Christopher couldn't stop thinking about the ring. Even as he drove away from the quiet suburban road, his mind kept circling back to Emily and the glint of gold on her finger. It wasn't just the ring itself that intrigued him. It was the way it seemed to tug at memories buried deep in his past. Memories of a family heirloom that had gone missing years ago. The car trouble had been resolved thanks to Emily and Mr. Peterson, but now Christopher felt a new kind of unease settling over him. He glanced down at his phone, scrolling absently, through emails and messages, though nothing held his attention. His thoughts kept drifting back to Emily's story about how her grandmother found the ring at a flea market. Could it really be the same one? And if so, what did that mean? When he finally arrived home, Christopher parked his car in the underground garage of his high-rise building and took the elevator to his penthouse. The luxurious apartment was sleek and modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of the city skyline. But tonight, the familiar surroundings offered little comfort. Instead of relaxing on the leather couch or pouring himself a drink, Christopher went straight to his study. Inside the room, shelves lined the walls, filled with books, awards, and mementos from his journey to success. Among them was an old photo album tucked away in a corner of the bookshelf. Christopher pulled it out carefully, brushing off a thin layer of dust. He hadn't opened it in years, not since the last time he'd tried to piece together the mystery of the missing ring. Flipping through the pages, he stopped at a faded photograph of his parents. They stood side by side, smiling warmly, his mother wearing the ring prominently on her left hand. It was unmistakable, the delicate band, the small diamond embedded in the center, the intricate design etched into the metal. His chest tightened. As he stared at the image, there was no doubt about it. The ring Emily wore looked exactly like this one. Christopher leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. The memories came flooding back now. He was just a teenager when the burglary happened. His parents' house had been broken into while they were away on vacation, and several valuable items were stolen, including jewelry, cash, and other heirlooms. The police investigated but never recovered most of the stolen goods. For years, the loss weighed heavily on his family, especially his mother, who had cherished the ring above all else. She often said it symbolized resilience and unity, passed down through generations. Now, decades later, here it was, or at least something eerily similar, on the finger of a stranger. A single mother working 2 jobs to support her son. Someone who seemed kind, humble, and completely unaware of the ring's potential significance. What were the odds? Christopher spent the rest of the night poring over the photos, searching online for information about stolen heirlooms, and replaying every detail of his encounter with Emily. By the time morning came, he still hadn't reached any conclusions. All he knew was that he needed answers, and that meant seeing Emily again. The next day, Christopher decided to track her down. It wasn't difficult. After asking around the neighborhood where his car had broken down, he learned that Emily lived nearby with her son Liam. Armed with this knowledge, he drove to the address he'd been given. As he approached the modest house, he felt a pang of guilt. Was it fair to intrude on her life like this? She had already done so much for him without expecting anything in return. But curiosity, and perhaps something deeper, drove him forward. He knocked on the front door, half expecting no one to answer. To his surprise, Emily opened it moments later. She looked surprised to see him but greeted him with a polite smile. "Christopher? Is everything okay?" "Hi, Emily," he said, feeling suddenly awkward. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything. I just wanted to thank you again for your help the other night. You really saved me." Her smile widened slightly. "Oh, it was nothing. I'm glad Mr. Peterson could fix your car." "Well, it meant a lot to me," Christopher replied. "And I wanted to bring you something as a token of appreciation." He held up a small gift bag containing a tablet he'd purchased earlier. "For Liam. I figured it might help with schoolwork or games." Emily hesitated, looking both touched and uncertain. "That's very generous of you, but you didn't have to do that." "I know," Christopher said quickly. "But I wanted to. Please take it. Consider it a thank you gift." After a moment, she accepted the bag with a nod. "Thank you. Liam will love it. Come on in. I'll make some coffee." Christopher followed her inside, taking in the cozy yet modest interior of the house. Toys were scattered across the living room floor, and a pile of laundry sat folded on the couch. It was clear that Emily worked hard to keep things running smoothly despite limited resources. Despite the clutter, there was a warmth to the space, a sense of home. As they sat at the kitchen table sipping coffee, Christopher found himself drawn into conversation. Emily spoke openly about her life, sharing stories about Liam's antics at school and the challenges of balancing work and parenting. He listened intently, marveling at her strength and optimism. Here was someone who faced adversity head-on, yet never lost sight of what mattered most. At one point, Emily mentioned her late grandmother, the woman who had given her the ring. "She was amazing," Emily said fondly, "always full of wisdom and kindness. She used to tell me stories about finding treasures at flea markets, things people overlooked but turned out to be special. That's how she found the ring." Christopher nodded slowly, his heart pounding. Now was the moment to ask. "About the ring," he began cautiously. "You said your grandmother found it at a flea market, right?" "Yes," Emily confirmed. "Why do you ask?" He hesitated, unsure how to phrase his next words. It looks familiar to me, almost like something from my family's past. My parents had a similar ring, an heirloom that was stolen years ago. I haven't seen it since I was a kid." Emily's eyes widened in surprise. "Really? That's incredible. Do you think it could be the same one?" "It's possible," Christopher admitted. "The design is unique, and the timing lines up. But I don't want to jump to conclusions. I'd need to see it closer to be sure." Emily didn't hesitate. She slipped the ring off her finger and handed it to him. Here, take a look. Christopher held the ring gently, turning it over in his hands. Every detail matched. The band, the diamond, the etching. His throat tightened as he realized it truly was the same ring. The one his mother had treasured. The one that represented so much more than its material value. This is it, he whispered, almost to himself. Looking up at Emily, he added, This is the ring that belonged to my family. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Emily looked stunned, her fingers clasped tightly together. I had no idea, she said finally. My grandmother always said it felt special, like it had a story. I guess she was right. Christopher nodded, still grappling with the enormity of the discovery. Your grandmother must have had a good eye for finding hidden gems, he said with a faint smile. Literally and figuratively. They sat in silence for a while, both processing the revelation. Finally, Christopher broke the quiet. I don't know what to say, Emily. This ring means a lot to my family, but it also seems to mean something. To yours too? Emily nodded thoughtfully. It does. It's always been a reminder of my grandmother's strength and faith. I never imagined it came from somewhere else entirely. Christopher leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. He felt torn between two worlds, one rooted in his family's history, the other tied to Emily's unexpected connection to the ring. Whatever decision lay ahead, he knew one thing for certain. Meeting Emily had changed something inside him, something profound. Christopher left Emily's house that day with more questions than answers. The ring was back in his possession, for now, but the weight of its history and meaning pressed heavily on him. He couldn't stop thinking about Emily, her kindness, and the way she spoke about her grandmother. It wasn't just a piece of jewelry, it was a symbol of love, resilience, and connection for both their families. How could he possibly decide what to do next? That night, Christopher sat alone in his penthouse, staring at the ring resting on the coffee table. The city lights glittered outside the window, but he barely noticed them. His mind replayed every detail of his conversation with Emily. The surprise in her voice when he told her about the ring's origins. The sincerity in her eyes when she handed it over without hesitation. She hadn't tried to argue or claim ownership. Instead, she seemed genuinely curious about its story. He picked up the ring again, turning it over in his fingers. For years he had assumed it was lost forever, stolen and sold off somewhere far away. Now here it was, found under such strange and unexpected circumstances. But what did it mean? Was it fate that brought him to Emily? Or was this simply a coincidence, a twist of luck that connected two lives across time and distance? The next morning, Christopher decided to dig deeper. He spent hours online, searching for records of the burglary that had taken place decades ago. Newspaper articles from the time confirmed the theft of valuable items, including the ring. There were no leads, no suspects, and no recovered goods. The case had gone cold almost immediately. Frustrated but determined, Christopher reached out to an old family friend, Margaret, who had known his parents well. If anyone might remember specific details about the ring's disappearance, it would be her. Margaret answered the phone with warmth, clearly pleased to hear from him. Christopher, it's been too long. How are you? I'm doing okay, he replied. But I need your help with something important. Do you remember the burglary at my parents' house all those years ago? There was a pause on the other end of the line. Oh yes, that was devastating for your mother. She loved that ring so much. Exactly, Christopher said. And I think I might have found it. Margaret gasped audibly. What? Where? He explained everything, how his car broke down, how Emily helped him, and how the ring ended up being hers. When he finished, Margaret was silent for a moment. Then she spoke softly. Christopher, that's remarkable. Your mother always believed the ring would find its way back someday. She used to say it carried a piece of our family's soul. Her words stayed with Christopher long after they hung up. A piece of the family's soul. Could it really be true? And if so, what responsibility did he have to honor that legacy? Over the next few days, Christopher wrestled with his decision. He knew the ring belonged to his family. It was part of their history. But he also recognized how much it meant to Emily. Her grandmother had cherished it, passing it down as a keepsake. To take it away from her now felt wrong, even though logic told him it wasn't hers to keep. Finally, he came to a conclusion. He needed to talk to Emily again. This time, he wanted to understand more about her grandmother and how the ring had come into her life. Maybe together, they could uncover the truth about its journey through the years. When Christopher arrived at Emily's house, she greeted him warmly, inviting him inside. Liam was playing quietly in the corner with the tablet Christopher had given him, completely absorbed in a game. Emily offered him a seat and some tea, sensing that something was on his mind. "I've been doing some research," Christopher began, holding the ring carefully in his hand. "And I'm pretty sure this is the same one that was stolen from my family all those years ago." Emily nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I figured as much. What happens now?" "That's what I wanted to talk to you about," Christopher said. "This ring means a lot to me, to my family, but I can see how much it means to you too. Your grandmother must have seen something special in it, something worth keeping." "She did," Emily agreed. "She always said it felt like it had a story, like it was waiting for someone to notice." Christopher smiled faintly. "Well, I think we've noticed, and I want to figure out where it came from before we make any decisions. Would you be willing to help me look into it?" Emily hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Of course. If it helps us understand its history, I'd like that." Together, they began piecing together clues. Emily shared what little she knew about the flea market where her grandmother had purchased the ring. It was a small, local event held monthly, often selling second-hand items donated by neighbors. Many of the vendors didn't ask questions about where things came from, they just wanted to sell them. Christopher suggested visiting the flea market themselves, hoping to find someone who might remember the transaction. They made plans to go the following weekend, agreeing to split the work evenly. As they talked, Christopher realized how much he enjoyed spending time with Emily. She was smart, resourceful, and incredibly grounded, qualities he admired deeply. For the first time in years, he found himself looking forward to something outside of work. The flea market turned out to be a lively affair, filled with colorful stalls and friendly vendors. Christopher and Emily walked side by side, asking questions and showing pictures of the ring to anyone who might recognize it. Most people shook their heads, saying they didn't recall anything unusual. But near the end of their search, an elderly woman running a jewelry booth paused, studying the photo closely. "This looks familiar," she said slowly. "A man came by here years ago selling odds and ends. He had a box of rings, and I remember this one because it stood out. It was elegant, unlike the others." Christopher's heart raced. "Do you remember who he was? Did he say where he got it?" The woman frowned, trying to recall. "He mentioned something about inheriting it from a relative, but I don't think he knew much about it. He just needed money." It wasn't much, but it was enough to confirm that the ring had passed through many hands over the years, eventually finding its way to Emily's grandmother. For Christopher, it was proof that the ring's journey was far from ordinary. It had traveled through time and chance, touching lives along the way. As they left the flea market, Emily turned to him with a smile. "So, what do we do now?" Christopher looked at her, feeling a mix of emotions. "I think we let the ring decide. If it brought us together, maybe it's meant to stay with whoever needs it most." Emily tilted her head, considering his words. "Maybe it doesn't have to choose. Maybe it can belong to both of us in a way." Christopher smiled, realizing she was right. The ring wasn't just a possession. It was a bridge between two families, two stories. And perhaps in finding each other, they had uncovered its true purpose. Christopher and Emily spent the days that followed their visit to the flea market, piecing together the fragments of the ring's story. The more they uncovered, the clearer it became that the ring had traveled a long and winding path through different hands, each leaving their mark on its history. It wasn't just an object, it was a thread connecting lives across time, carrying with it whispers of love, loss, and resilience. For Christopher, Learning about the ring's journey deepened his appreciation for it. He realized now why his mother had always said it felt alive, as though it carried something beyond its material value. For Emily, the discovery reinforced the bond she felt with her grandmother. She could almost hear her grandmother's voice telling her stories about treasures hidden in plain sight, waiting to be noticed. But as much as the ring tied them to their families' pasts, it also began to tie them to each other. Their shared quest brought them closer, creating moments of laughter, curiosity, and quiet reflection. They started meeting regularly at coffee shops, parks, or even Emily's house to discuss what they'd learned and plan their next steps. Over time, these meetings became less about the ring and more about simply enjoying each other's company. One afternoon, while sitting on a bench at a nearby park, Christopher turned to Emily with a thoughtful expression. "You know," he said, "I've been thinking about something." "What is it?" Emily asked, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "This whole experience has made me realize how much I've taken my family for granted. My siblings and I, we haven't been close for years. Work and everything else got in the way. But hearing your stories about Liam and seeing how much you prioritize being there for him, it's made me rethink things." Emily smiled softly. "Family can be complicated, but it's worth fighting for. Trust me, I know." Her words stayed with Christopher long after their conversation ended. That evening, he picked up the phone and dialed his older sister, Rachel, whom he hadn't spoken to in months. Their last conversation had been tense, filled with unresolved arguments and misunderstandings. But this time, Christopher approached it differently. Instead of focusing on their differences, he shared the story of the ring, the heirloom that had once divided their family and now seemed to be bringing it back together. Rachel listened quietly, occasionally asking questions. By the end of the call, her tone had softened. "That's quite a story," she said. "I'm glad you found it. Maybe we should talk more often." "I'd like that," Christopher replied, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders. It was a small step, but it was a start. As weeks passed, Christopher continued reaching out to his siblings, slowly rebuilding the connections he had neglected. Each conversation reminded him of the importance of family, a lesson Emily embodied effortlessly. Watching her juggle work, parenting, and still find time to care for others inspired him to make changes in his own life. Meanwhile, Emily found herself reflecting on her own circumstances. Christopher's generosity and support had been unexpected blessings. Not only had he helped her feel seen and valued, but he had also shown Liam kindness and attention. For a boy growing up without a father figure, having someone like Christopher around made a difference. One evening, as they sat in Emily's living room discussing their progress, Christopher broached a topic he'd been considering for some time. "Emily," he began hesitantly, "there's something I want to ask you." She looked up from the book she'd been reading to Liam, sensing the seriousness in his tone. "What is it?" "The ring. I've thought a lot about what you said, that maybe it doesn't have to choose between us. And I agree. It's meant to connect people, not divide them." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "So I'd like to give it back to you. Not because it belongs to your family, but because it's found a new purpose. With you." Emily stared at him, stunned. "Are you sure? This is your family's heirloom." "Yes," Christopher said firmly. "And that's exactly why I want you to have it. You've shown me what it means to truly cherish something, not just for its history, but for the values it represents. Strength, unity, hope. Those are the things my mother wanted it to stand for. And I think it does that best when it's with you." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she accepted the ring. "Thank you," she whispered. "This means so much, to me, to Liam, to my grandmother's memory." Christopher smiled, feeling a sense of peace settle over him. "It's where it belongs." Their friendship continued to grow stronger in the weeks that followed. Christopher found himself looking forward to spending time with Emily and Liam, whether it was helping with homework, playing catch in the backyard, or simply sharing meals together. For the first time in years, he felt grounded, as though he had finally found balance in his life. One Saturday morning, Emily invited Christopher to attend one of Liam's school events, a science fair where students showcased projects they had worked on throughout the semester. Christopher agreed immediately, eager to support Liam and see firsthand the world Emily had built for her son. At the event, Liam proudly presented his project, a homemade volcano that erupted with baking soda and vinegar. His excitement was infectious, and Christopher couldn't help but laugh as Liam enthusiastically explained the science behind it. Emily stood nearby, watching with pride as her son basked in the attention. Later, as they walked back to the car, Christopher turned to Emily with a grin. "He's amazing, you know. Smart, creative, and full of energy, just like his mom." Emily laughed, shaking her head. "You're biased." "No, I'm serious," Christopher insisted. "You've done an incredible job raising him." Her smile softened, and for a moment, they locked eyes, understanding passing between them. Neither needed to say it aloud. They both knew their connection had grown into something deeper, something neither of them had anticipated, but both welcomed. The time summer arrived, Christopher and Emily had become a steady presence in each other's lives. They celebrated small victories together, Liam's report card, Christopher's reconciliation with his siblings, and supported each other through challenges. For Christopher, it was a reminder that success wasn't measured by wealth or achievements alone. It was about relationships, kindness, and finding meaning in everyday moments. For Emily, it was proof that help could come from unexpected places, and that sometimes fate had a way of bringing people together when they least expected. One evening, as they sat on Emily's porch watching the sunset, Christopher reached for her hand. The ring glinted in the fading light, a symbol of everything they had discovered, not just about the past, but about themselves and each other. "You know," he said quietly, "I used to think my life was complete. But meeting you, it's shown me there's so much more to living than I ever realized." Emily squeezed his hand, her heart full. "I feel the same way. Thank you for everything." They sat in comfortable silence, the ring shining brightly on her finger. It wasn't just a piece of jewelry anymore. It was a testament to the power of connection, forgiveness, and love, a reminder that even the smallest objects could hold the biggest stories. Summer turned into fall, and Christopher's life had changed in ways he never imagined. The sleek high-rise penthouse that once felt like the center of his world now seemed less important compared to the warmth of Emily's home. He found himself spending more time with her and Liam, learning to appreciate the simple joys of life, cooking dinner together, helping Liam with his homework, or taking long walks through the neighborhood parks. These moments were quieter than the fast-paced business meetings and glamorous events he was used to, but they filled him with a sense of purpose he hadn't known before. Emily noticed the change in Christopher, too. The stressed, driven man who had first appeared on her doorstep months ago was gone. In his place was someone calmer, kinder, and more present. She admired how he had embraced her little family, treating Liam not as an obligation, but as someone genuinely special. It wasn't just about the ring anymore. It was about the bond they had built. A connection rooted in trust, respect, and shared experiences. One crisp autumn afternoon, Emily and Christopher took Liam to a pumpkin patch outside the city. The air smelled of fallen leaves and fresh earth, and the field stretched wide under a brilliant blue sky. As Liam ran ahead searching for the perfect pumpkin, Emily slowed down to walk beside Christopher. "You've been great with him," she said, her voice soft. "He looks up to you, you know." Christopher smiled, watching Liam crouch by a large orange pumpkin. "I just try to be there for him. He's an amazing kid." "He is," Emily agreed. "But it means a lot to see someone step into that role willingly. Not everyone would." Christopher glanced at her, seeing the gratitude in her eyes. "You've done an incredible job raising him, Emily. I'm lucky to even be part of it." They stood quietly for a moment, enjoying the peacefulness of the farm. Then Emily spoke again, her tone lighter this time. Do you remember when we first met? You looked so out of place standing by your fancy car. Christopher chuckled, remembering the night vividly. I was completely lost. And then you showed up, ready to help without expecting anything in return. Well, look where it got us, Emily teased, gesturing toward Liam, who was now proudly dragging his chosen pumpkin back to them. Yeah, Christopher said, his smile widening. Look where it got us. As the weeks went by, their relationship continued to deepen. What started as friendship blossomed into something more, a partnership built on mutual understanding and affection. For Emily, it was comforting to have someone who supported her dreams and believed in her strength. For Christopher, it was fulfilling to share his life with someone who reminded him to slow down and cherish the present. One evening, as they sat together in Emily's living room after putting Liam to bed, Christopher reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Emily looked at him curiously, unsure what to expect. I've been thinking about this for a while, he began, opening the box to reveal a delicate necklace with a tiny diamond pendant. It's not an heirloom or anything like that, but I wanted to give you something that symbolizes us, where we are now. Emily gasped softly, her hand flying to her mouth. Christopher. It's not about replacing the ring, he added quickly. That belongs to you and your family. This is just a new beginning. If you'll let me be part of it. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she nodded. Of course, I'd love that. Christopher placed the necklace around her neck, his fingers brushing gently against her skin. When he leaned back, he saw the sparkle in her eyes, not just from the pendant but from happiness. They didn't need grand gestures or declarations. Their connection spoke louder than words ever could. The holidays approached, bringing a flurry of activity. Emily and Christopher worked together to make the season memorable for Liam. They decorated the house with twinkling lights, baked cookies, and wrapped presents late into the night. For Christopher, it was a stark contrast to the lavish parties and expensive gifts he used to exchange with colleagues. Yet, he couldn't remember feeling happier. On Christmas morning, Liam woke them early, bursting into their bedroom with excitement. It's here. It's finally here, he shouted, jumping onto the bed. Laughing, Christopher and Emily followed him downstairs where the tree stood surrounded by colorful packages. They spent the day opening gifts, playing games, and sharing stories over a hearty meal. At one point, Liam turned to Christopher and asked shyly, Does this mean you're staying forever? Christopher exchanged a glance with Emily, who gave him an encouraging smile. Yes, buddy, he replied, ruffling Liam's hair. This means I'm staying forever. Liam grinned, throwing his arms around Christopher in a tight hug. Good, because you're the best. For Christopher, those 4 words meant more than any title or achievement he had earned in his career. He realized then that true success wasn't measured by wealth or power. It was measured by the love you gave and received. As winter melted into spring, Christopher officially moved in with Emily and Liam. His penthouse downtown collected dust. As he settled into their cozy home, trading boardroom suits for casual jeans and sneakers. He became actively involved in Liam's school activities, attending parent-teacher conferences and coaching his Little League team. Neighbors often remarked how happy the 3 of them looked together, and Christopher couldn't agree more. Meanwhile, Emily encouraged Christopher to reconnect further with his own family. With her support, he organized a weekend getaway for his siblings and their children. For the first time in years, the Blake family gathered without tension or resentment. Laughter echoed through the house as old wounds healed and new memories formed. Rachel pulled Christopher aside during the visit and hugged him tightly. I'm glad you found her, she whispered. She's good for you. Christopher smiled, knowing she was right. I think I'm good for her too. Months later, on a warm summer evening, Christopher stood in Emily's backyard, watching Liam chase fireflies with a jar in hand. Emily joined him, leaning her head against his shoulder. You know, she said, when my grandmother gave me that ring, she told me it would lead me to something important. I guess she was right. Christopher kissed the top of her head, holding her close. She must have known you'd find someone who needed you as much as you needed them. Emily laughed softly. Or maybe she just knew I'd find someone who loves flea markets. They both laughed, the sound blending with the chirping crickets and rustling leaves. The ring still rested on Emily's finger, a reminder of the journey that brought them together. But it was no longer just a symbol of the past. It was a promise of the future they were building together. As they stood there, hand in hand, Christopher felt a profound sense of gratitude. Life had taken him down unexpected paths, introducing him to people and moments that reshaped his perspective. And while he couldn't predict what lay ahead, he knew one thing for certain: wherever fate led him next, he wouldn't face it alone.